Hi, welcome back to Under the Floorboards. We're welcome again, Willy Dodd's
Thank you.
return guest. We're going to talk about all things about rent cap, renting, any problems, government changes, all these types of things. Thanks very much.
It's good to have you in camera again.
I don't know if that's a good thing,
that-
but we'll
see if it actually works this time.
Well,
That's still
that's
there.
it.
But
We've got 3 cameras on Willy now, so hopefully no break out of them.
thanks for coming back, mate. Obviously, it was good to get you on. I think one, so people can see your face. But I think obviously a lot's happened. Certainly the kind of rent cap being lifted and stuff like that as well. You'd be a good expert to speak to of your experience of it from a landlord's perspective and what you're finding with tenants and that kind of thing. But before we get into all that, like, what's been happening since you were last in?
So business-wise, has been absolutely pandemonium. I've been saying this to a couple of clients, is that you can never complain when you're too busy.
No.
The problem that we're kind of I'm just finding we're kind of at that kind of stage where business is going really well and you've got a lot kind of going on. It's juggling a lot of plates and stuff like that, but it's trying to kind of keep that service level up. That's the key thing. So make sure you're getting back to tenants, make sure you're getting the maintenance kind of carried out, landlord queries that are coming in. First thing I'm kind of saying just to guys is, listen, thanks very much for your patience and just most of the clients that we've got are kind of understanding that sometimes you can't always get a response within half an hour or something like that. But it's trying to kind of tie off any queries and that and make sure that you're there for the client more than anything else, because ultimately you start to lose that kind of regular kind of interaction with the client and stuff like that, then things maybe start to get missed or start to find gaps, and then that's when kind of issues appear. So keeping on top of everything, and just obviously, especially with things like the rent cap, come to an end, having more and more conversations with clients and what's the best way forward. It's kind of thinking, right, is it going to be a short term in the next year, 18 months, 2 years? So we're trying to kind of focus a lot of clients on the long term rather than just what can we do now.
So why don't you walk us through the rent cap changes?
So
from history.
As we kind of know, that the rent cap was put in as part of the cost of the living legislation, where they could raise it a maximum of 12%, and it was kind of capped to that. You could get away with kind of capping it, raising it 12%, and even if it went to the rent officer, you weren't really getting too much in the way of pushback unless the rent cap was taking it beyond what was considered market rent. From what we know, that the government were pulling from the same data sources that we've got, they probably have a bit more of an insight than we will. But what I've kind of found since the rent cap has kind of come away, we've had a rush of landlords saying, right, I want to increase my rent, I want to get up to market rate. But we're actually starting to find more tenants are starting to kind of engage, which sometimes didn't happen before. You would have your tenant kind of come back and say, I'm not happy with the rent going from, let's say it was going from 800 to whatever 12% of that is, well, say 880 is 10%. I can't really afford that. And then they'll raft off a list of maintenance issues and stuff like that. But more and more I speak to tenants now, they're doing the research in the market and they're looking about to say, right, I've got a 2-bed ground floor flat in X area, I'm paying 700 quid a month, which is well under. The market rate is 900. So they're thinking, you go from 7 to 9, it's a jump of £200, but it's also a jump of what? The best part of 30%. Landlord could do that if they wanted to. But a lot of landlords, again, we're having the conversation is, right, where are you at this moment in time? What's the necessity? Is there a necessity to increase the rent? Mortgage costs have gone up, insurance costs have gone up, cost of maintenance is going up, everything is going up. But I've managed to kind of speak, when we speak to clients and that, we try and kind of get them to take it off with what's coming out your back end of your pocket versus what's it going to cost for you to find a new tenant. You could be without a property, vacant property for 2 months, which will cost a landlord at £700 a month, £1,400, plus then their marketing costs and all that missed income, versus negotiation. Take negotiation with the tenant, say, if you can't go up to the market rent, where can you go to? Because ultimately, if the landlord struggles to make money on the property, maintenance that is basic stuff takes longer to do, then gets worse, then costs more, and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah, landlord starts to get a bit resentful of putting money out there.
And you might find that rent gets delayed in coming in. You might find that the tenants start to the relationship breaks down. It goes back to kind of what I said in the first podcast that I've done with you guys is It's all about relationships. If you've got a good relationship with your tenant will report maintenance when it's due, or they will go that extra mile to keep an eye on, is there's maybe a bit of mould developing on the ceiling and stuff like that. Fan working okay. They'll go that way because they'll take care of it a little bit more because they'll see it as their home, and not just something they're paying out for to stay in, like a house. We want our tenants to make sure it is a home rather than a house. So we will negotiate with landlords whether it's the case of putting pictures on walls and things like that. If the tenant feels more and more like it's a home rather than a house, they'll treat it as a home. And therefore you probably find that they'll put a bit more energy and a bit more effort to keeping it better. But also, if there is anything that goes awry, they're quick to report stuff, knowing that the landlord will get the best outcome that's done. But again, it kind of enhances the relationship between the tenant and the landlord as well. So we're finding more tenants are coming to the table and actually saying, listen, we don't want to move. Kids are settled in school. We've got a routine and things like that. The upheaval of moving, I mean, if you've ever moved house, you know it's an absolute nightmare. It is, and it's costly as well.
And as a landlord, what are you doing with landlords? So in that scenario, you've got a £700 he's getting a month, but actually he was looking around the market as well and seen 900. What are you doing to appease that person?
So I'll take this from a personal experience. The rent that I've just quoted there is, I'm a tenant myself.
Yeah.
So my landlord had phoned me saying, listen, been in the property 3 years now, paying 725. I've done a wee bit of a look at the market. I know if I went to the market rate, it would be 900. And I'm sitting there looking, thinking, it would actually be more than that, but I'm not going to tell him that. So we negotiated, and he basically said, we went to 812. And I'm like, okay, I can afford it. I didn't want to pay it. I'd rather the money in my pocket, but I don't really cause too much in the way of hassle for the landlord. Landlord gets in when he needs to. We have a chat. If there's any issues that need done, he gets them fixed. And I try and draw on my own experience as a tenant, and try and put that into the effect. So, and I use that scenario a lot with my tenants and my landlords. Is that, listen, I don't own my own home, I rent, and some people are, why do you rent? Honestly, because it's flexible for myself at this moment in time. I stay in a nice area, and if I was to go and try and buy a house myself, I can need to put X amount of money down. I'm quite comfortable renting at this moment in time, but it might get to the stage where I want to buy my own house in the future. And a lot of the younger generation, I think, are leaning towards generation rent. I think it's been dubbed. So making a house a home and being comfortable in there is paramount. It's paramount. If you don't feel like it's your home and you feel like it's a house, once you step beyond that barrier, you start to kind of probably lose a little bit of care for it. You're not as bothered about things. So I think it's building those relationships, have conversations with tenants and landlord, set expectations is the big thing. I have had a couple of landlords that come to me, I want to increase it to this. And I'm sitting there thinking, right, okay, that's fine. And I'll just hypothetically ran the scenario all the way to the end. Tenant moves out and you want to advertise at that. Do you think you're going to get that? Okay, I'm happy to do that. That's your instruction. I'm happy to do that. Take your instruction as my client. But warn them about the pitfalls. If that missed rent, how does that impact on you? And you're doing this maybe for 60, 70 quid.
Yeah, because you're increasing the risk, aren't you?
Absolutely.
The people could leave. So is your opinion that you would rather people were on maybe they were paying lower than the rate, but they were maybe there 2, 3, 4 years?
That's, again, you weigh up that risk. If you say to a landlord, listen, your rent you're getting at the moment is 725. Your market rent could be £200 or more for that. You weigh up, of that £200 more, you'll probably pay your percentage to your letting agent. So let's say it's 10%. There's an extra 20 quid to the letting agent. So there's 180 quid that's going in your pocket. You may actually encounter maintenance issues that come out the back of that because there's maybe small things that have not needed done, or just tenants like, right, okay, I'll pay it, but I need you to do this. So that 180 quid that's coming in your back pocket at the outset, over the course of, again, I try and get people to look at it over the course of the year. That's 1,800, and that you're talking that's £2,000 over the course of the year. If you've got 2 or 3 maintenance issues, let's say the washing machine's a bit issue and it turns out it needs a new washing machine, there's 300 quid away, and all of a sudden it dilutes that, and you're maybe left with £1,000 over the course of the year, because things will start to crop up a bit more and more. So I kind of harp back on about it. Common ground. If that tenant goes and you're adamant you want to get £950 a month, my experience at the moment, some properties are sticking just now because there's a lot of choice out there, especially in Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
But that as well, like if they are trying to increase it to the market rent, what condition are these flats in or houses in at the market rent? Have they got newer kitchens and bathrooms?
Absolutely.
And your tenant's been in there for 8 years and the kitchen and bathroom, they've lived with it, it's fine.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get market rent with that. Or you might, slightly under, but the hassle for you to go and do that and then maybe even repair the kitchen, the bathroom, you're wiping away all of that for a few years for the sake of £2.
The thing is, I mean, it's the classic is, how much is your time worth? If you are a landlord and you are in a high pressure job and you're constantly busy at work, you don't want me, I've got this tenant lined up, got this tenant lined up, got this, that and the next thing, this needs done, they're asking if they can do this, that and the next thing. All that time is taken away from doing your day-to-day job. Most people that invest in property that do it as a business are doing it for passive income or doing it as a pension pot. But when you're actively having to get involved a lot more, deciding, approving tenants, making sure that we're having to tweak adverts, having to do this, it's taken away from your time doing what you want to do. So that's all, and there's a monetary factor on the landlord side for that as well. If you're getting somebody that's getting paid 50 grand a year and their hourly rate works out at £100 an hour and they've got to spend 2 or 3 hours over the course of 2 or 3 weeks just chatting with the agent, doing bits and bobs, approving quotes, all that kind of stuff as well, all of a sudden that eats into that income as well. And there's no guarantee that that tenant won't come in there to get into the area and then start actively looking for something else. So with the tenants being able to give notice at short notice, 1 month's notice.
Yeah.
And then you to try and organise, right, I need to upgrade the kitchen. I mean, you'll know yourself, Sean. If I've got a month till a tenant moves out, what's the chances of getting the kitchen measured, all the trades lined up, payments in, deposits in, everyone ready to go? So when that tenant hands the keys back, you're getting that kitchen done.
The thing is as well, like even depending on where you get the kitchen, you can still be like a couple of weeks for delivery, or if you get a half decent trade, they're not available next week. Do you know what I mean? They're not available tomorrow. They're booked out.
Yep.
So you're actually that month you might get something done that month, but it'll be a very rush job, and it'll probably be costly because it's a rush job as well.
And classic.
Aye.
Go cheap, pay twice. That's it. So again, all these kind of factors come into my thinking when negotiating. What's the kitchen like? And again, we use it as it's not a leveraging tool. It's more so, again, setting expectations more than anything else. And if you are a letting agent and you're not prepared to stand up to your client to say, this is what I believe in my professional experience is the best thing for you to do, you're just going to continually get rolled over, sit with vacant properties, spend all your time doing viewings, vetting tenants, and you're not making any money in that until the tenant actually goes in the door. So you're sitting with a large amount of void periods, having to spend more time finding tenants and doing viewings and all that kind of thing to go alongside it. Yeah, you'll get paid when you get a tenant in, but ultimately it's just causing stress for everybody.
And what do you think? So if I think about it from a landlord point of view, what kind of mistakes are landlords making? What are their demands? What are they, apart from the financial thing, is there things that the landlords are doing that you would be like, that you're constantly telling them, look, stop doing this? I'm just thinking for people coming and listening.
Yeah, so I would never ever tell anyone they're wrong. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I mean, you can look at any aspect of the property and everybody comes from a different viewpoint based on their experience. You could have somebody that's been in the property for 30 years, but they've outsourced absolutely everything. But you've got somebody that's been in it for 3 years. It's maybe the nature of their job. They're a bit more analytical. And I like people that ask questions.
Yep.
Because I ask questions. If I don't understand something, I want to wrap my head around it so I can form my own opinion and my own thoughts and that based on the advice and from the experts, because ultimately that's how you kind of expand your knowledge. So I wouldn't necessarily say any landlords are making mistakes, but sometimes they are looking at maybe what friends and family are getting for similar properties, and they're looking at marketing photos and they're looking at online portals and a letting agent or any agent's job when they pick photos of a property is to make it look the best they possibly can.
Yeah.
Get people through the door, get people applying. The way we kind of do our application process, on a tangent here, is we obviously make it look good. We do the video walk round, and everybody that inquires gets the video walk round because we ask them to apply for the property, first of all, before we shortlist anybody. We want to minimise the amount of time anybody's going out and doing viewings. Because you could have a block booking of viewings in for 10 people for an hour and a half, and that property's 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
So you think that's a 3-hour slot, it's half a working day doing a block booking of viewings, whereas we'd rather shortlist 3 to 5 people, book a viewing slot in. They've completed the application process. It's a chance for us to meet them, ask any questions, and they've kind of got past the first stage. So we try and minimise the time that we are out and about and things like that as well. So going back to the original point, landlords are not making mistakes, but they're looking and they're taking their data points from everywhere possible and trying to kind of come up with a solution that works best for them. But when I speak to landlords, I speak nice and freely and says, right, okay, what's your again, I go back to what I said in the first podcast, what's the long-term goal here? Is the long-term goal just to add cash flow? Is the long-term goal is, right, I want to increase the rent because after this tenant moves out, I want to replace the kitchen. So they're trying to gather cash for the long term. Is it the case that their costs have went up and their cash flow is no longer £300 a month, it's £100 a month and it's too tight?
Yeah.
So it's finding their motivation from going from X to Y and meeting in the middle. So you've got some landlords that they'll not tell you. They'll just say, that's what I want. Okay, fine, not a problem. But the more data points that we've got from a landlord's perspective, we can understand the landlord struggles where we can try and tailor our service to be better for them. And it's feedback for us as well without asking for feedback. So it's asking what problems landlords are encountering and how we can use our professional services to make sure that that's a long-term strategy for the landlord as well. Because if it's not making money for the landlord, and they don't have and they've got an easy exit strategy, source the property on, let somebody else deal with it, kick the tenant out, sell it in the open market, we're losing business at the back end of that as well. And we want to keep clients for the long term and not just for the short term. So as much as it's got to work for the landlord, it's got to work for the tenant, it's also got to work for ourselves. If everybody's happy and content and everybody's got an expectation of what to expect from the other parties, life goes on.
Fantastic.
You were saying about positive from the tenants are being more engaging, you said, in terms of the reaction. Have you seen anything else positive come of it? Like, for example, landlords saying I want to increase. I don't know why you always use the example of £200, but why increase £200? But they're saying, I'll increase £200, but listen, I'm going to get you a new bathroom. Have you seen that kind of positive change? That's always a positive for the tenant as well.
So this is the thing. When if the landlord will come to us and say, we want to raise the rent £200, and we'll go hypothetically, we'll go from 700 to 900. That's a 30% increase, which is nearly three times what you were allowed to increase it under the rent cap. That over the course of the year, the landlord may say, well, listen, I'm looking to put a bathroom in there. We try and ask the landlord the motivation. My mortgage is up in 18 months. I'm going to go from 2% to 4%. And you're like, right, okay. So they've worked out that their payments are going to go up £100 a month. You're like, right, okay. However, the valuation that they've got at the time is outdated, is 3 years old.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, we suspect the property's maybe increased in value from 100 grand to 120 grand. So you'll be able to pull an extra 15 grand out, but the property needs to hit 120 grand. And we'll go in and say, here's examples of properties at 120 grand versus your one. So for you to get that valuation, you might need to spend a bit of money on it. Mm-hmm. So it might be the case that you'll know yourself. You guys will know yourself. There's ways to be creative to add value without spending a lot of money. Might be freshen up the paintwork, might be new carpets, might be a wrap a kitchen. It might be to rip out a bath and wet wall around it, and when the surveyor goes in, new bathroom's been put in, been freshly decorated. You could do that on a budget, but make it more presentable. Tenant thinks they're getting new, they're happy to pay it because the property's been improved as well. And again, it's thinking of the long term. So there is positives where landlords are now coming to the table to say, I want to increase it by £200, and we're saying, right, okay, that's fine. Tenants turn around and saying, well, I'm happy to pay the £200. I don't want to move or anything like that. However, X, Y, and Z really could be done. And again, it's the balancing act. You're never ever going to get everything. However, if the tenants feel like they're getting something, they'll give something, and it's just It's just trying to find that balancing act of what the landlord can realistically afford and what we can do in order to get the best possible result for everybody. And if everybody's happy, things keep ticking over. So it's bringing everybody to the table, really.
Yeah.
Say I'm a landlord and I've never increased the rent before. What would I do? Like, I come to you and my letting agent go, put that up. Like, what's the kind of process?
So you're talking about a landlord that's self-managing, for example.
I suppose so. Just for anybody looking to increase their rent, like what would be the processes of doing that? So you go and give how many days notice to your tenant and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it depends on the tenancy agreement they're on. First of all, if it is the old short-share tenancy agreement, so anything before December 2017, normally it'll be written into the tenancy agreement of how much notice you need to give. It's roughly 2 months' notice. We always encourage landlords to do, because the PRT is slightly different, that's 3 months' notice, but you also need to allow 2 days for delivery. But on the PRT, it specifies how documents will be served, whether it's posted or an email. We try and encourage the owners that are on the SAT just to kind of mirror that as much as they possibly can. Make sure they add a couple of days in for delivery, cover their bases, because the SAT is obviously older.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily communication preferences and things like that as well. So what you don't want to do is you don't want the tenant then to challenge it. You go to the tribunal and you'd be waiting 3 months or something at the tribunal to get there, or longer probably. And then it just creates, again, unnecessary stress. So there's plenty of resources out there. If anyone hasn't joined, if you're self-managing landlord, I highly suggest Scottish Association of Landlords. There's loads and loads of free information out there. Or pick up the phone and speak to a letting agent. Our details will be in the caption. I'm more than happy to kind of help any landlord just kind of navigate what can be tricky ground, especially if they've not dealt with it before. But I'd also pick up the phone and speak to the tenants. The tenants might be looking to buy somewhere, so you get vacant possession and you're thinking, actually, I could sell it on. If you're upfront and honest with your tenants and just say, I'm looking at doing this, want to get your feedback on it, again, it's bridging that gap rather than it just being straight tenant, straight landlord. It's bringing everybody together. Be open with your tenants, have that conversation. They might be dead against it and they might turn around and say, well, absolutely not. And then you could be creating issues for yourself going there. But ultimately, put emotions aside and treat it as it is a business. If you're adamant you want to increase the rent, then increase the rent. The tenant can appeal it. Whether the rent officer comes down or anything like that, I think from what I understand, I think they're actually doing away with the rent officer's element of it. So, but you don't want to create unnecessary stress for the tenant or yourself, because then that's when it becomes a he said, she said, rent's late or delayed or doesn't get paid. And it just creates unnecessary stress. So again, picking up the phone to the tenant and saying, this is what I'm looking to do. Not increase the rent in X amount of time. I actually met a client a couple of months ago who they've got a tenant that's been in property and he's increased the rent once, and it was after the first year, and the tenant's been in for 10 years and the market rent's 350 quid under.
Jeez.
And this was a very, very difficult one because there was no specific rent increase clause in the contract. Contract was like 2 pages long. It was ridiculous. It was 2011, I think they'd been in there from.
But see, in that circumstance, would you go back to the landlord and advise them that they should take an increase? Or they should look for an increase?
So
or would you just let it be happy if both are happy?
Again, I asked the landlord, what's the long-term motivation here? And the long-term motivation is that he's now retiring. So his pension only covers X much, and he needs the money for himself to live on.
Yeah.
And the tenants paid, I think tenants paid at 600 or 650 or something like that for 10 years. They've always got stuff done and they've had a good relationship. But he needs to try and increase it as much as they can. But the way it was written into the lease, and I had to take advice on this, it was something that was kind of, I wasn't sure, is that you actually had to serve notice on the tenant first. But the rent increase, basically, if the tenant didn't move out, the rent increase came into force the day after. So if the tenant didn't leave and he forced him to go to the tribunal, he would get his rent increase whilst they were going through the eviction process. But that was the process they had to follow.
It's quite horrible, but isn't it? Because he's got a great tenant who he's like happy to keep, and he's just really got to have a conversation that goes.
That's it. So I encouraged them, because we were obviously not managing the property. I encouraged them to say, pick up the phone to the tenant and tell them you have to do this, because this is the way the contract's written. But it's not your intention to evict the tenant, but you have to do this. So as long as they're happy to pay the rent increase and stuff, you still have to go through this process because that's the way it was designed at the time. So now it's a little bit kind of simpler where stuff's written into the lease to say, if the landlord chooses to increase the rent, this is what they must do. This is what they can do. This is what they cannot do. But I think one of the good things is the rent cap is, again, I think it's just bringing people together. Tenants don't want to move and then have to pay the market rent if they can avoid it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they've got somewhere that needs to be clean, safe. They can make sure stuff's getting done that needs to get done. And I think it is bringing... Difficult conversations will be there. They'll always be there. Maybe tenants can't afford the £100 or the £200 extra a month. Okay, can't afford that. Landlord doesn't want the void period. Also doesn't want to put a new bathroom in or put a new kitchen in. What can be done here?
So we talked about, I'm going to call it flowery, kind of flowery, beautiful. Let's have grown-up chats. Let's talk about it.
Aye.
Go and walk the other way that you go... They don't want to pay. I'm just thinking of the darkness, they don't want an increase.
Go worst case scenario. We'll go worst case scenario.
With the end point eviction, but that's like the worst possible, must be the worst possible, because that's not helping anyone.
It's not.
So what is the step when you go, we want more money, and they go, no?
Yeah. The thing is, if somebody blankly comes out and just says, and we present the option to him, your rent's 700, the market rent's 900, the landlord would like to increase the rent to 800. Tenant outright says no. Right, okay. They're not interested in having a conversation. If it is the case that you get all the way to the end and you have the conversation, you say this, that, and the next thing, and tenant still says no, at least you've had the discussion. The landlord can then turn around, he's got a decision to make. You either increase the rent and you stick to your guns that you're doing it, and if the tenant then starts to pay, say you increase it to 800 and you've met them in the middle, you increase it to 800 and the tenant doesn't pay it, the tenant gradually then starts to build up rent arrears and they get the rent notices, the arrears notices, and then it has got to the stage where the tenant is then calling the landlord's bluff and, I don't think you'll evict me, I don't think you'll go through the process, and you just need to see the landlord, listen, emotionally it's going to be stressful, but ultimately you've tried to engage with the tenant. It gets to the stage where you're like, what more can you do? The tenant's actively not saying no. You're increasing the rent because your costs have gone up, and let's say you want to put a new bathroom in, you want to spend that investment, but the tenant's flatly saying no. What else can you do? Because ultimately, if it's not profitable for the landlord, and there's not enough skin in the game for them to make it a sustainable thing going forward, it's going to get to the stage where they're going to turn around and say, well, do you know what? You go and I'll sell. It's either I'll sell or you go, and then I'll do everything I need to do, and then I'll get a tenant in that'll pay the market rent.
And I just want to ask, and maybe this is just a question. You mentioned, I'll just put up £100. Is that what he needs to do? He can just go, so if you're a tenant and I'm the landlord, I can just say to you through my letting agency here, I want £100 more. He writes and says, by the way, at the end of next month, it's £100 more.
Yeah.
And that's it. Is that what happens, or does it need to be end of contracts, or how does it work?
So what we would do is, once we've got the decision from the owner to say, listen, I want to put it up to this, if the tenant flatly turns around and says no, we get it in right to say your instruction is you want to increase the rent from £700 to £800, we would then serve the rent increase notice on the tenant, which takes 3 months to come into effect. So it doesn't come in instantly. So it's 3 months. So we served the rent increase notice today on, what we're on, the 21st of June. 21st of May.
21st of May.
What a time walk there.
It's been one of those days. We would then serve it, and if email was the necessary method of contact, we'd serve it today, and it would come into effect as their next payment after the 23rd of June. So that's your 2 days for delivery, plus then 3 months, not 23rd of June.
August.
It would be
September,
June.
3 months.
July, August. So 3
3
months,
months
and
and
then
2 days.
Missed my holiday.
Yeah. And let's say the rent was due on the 1st of the month. So as of when the rent increase notice expires, in this scenario, it would be June, July, August. It would be the 1st of September that rent increase then would kick in. The tenant decided not to pay it and just paid their standard amount or even nothing at all, rent arrears processes would kick in place. But that 3 month period gives the tenant maybe a bit of time to calm down and come back to the table, gives the landlord a bit of time the rent increase notice has been served. And that's it. If the landlord chooses to withdraw at the back end, then so be it. If the tenant then comes back to the table saying, right, okay, we'll do this. Sometimes when that email hits, this is happening, you'll maybe get an angry call for the tenant. Say, you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. They've been warned about it, but they're still a bit emotional about it. You give them a bit of time to think about it. They come back. Maybe they come back to the table. I relate this to when you've evicted a tenant and you're going through the tribunal and you get a payment order. Now, the way the payment order works is that you would go to the employer would make the necessary deductions, tenant finds out about it when it comes off their wages. They get their pay slip and they say, that's £500 short because you were £2,000 in arrears at your previous property. We've done...
So it's like arrestment, is it?
Yeah, earnings arrestment, yeah. So when that comes off and they say, fuck, I've lost £500, I now need to find that up to do shopping or whatever and that, they'll come back to the table because that'll keep happening every single month. And maybe somebody can afford to lose £500 a month, not bother about it, fine. But often enough that they can't and they've moved on. And when the arrears letters start coming, and typically if there's a family in there, it will affect one of the partners, either the male or the female, or if it's two, it'll affect one of the partners.
Yeah.
They'll start to get on at the other one, and that because tension, it's eventually somebody will come back to the table. You'll maybe get people that will just point blank refuse to do anything about it. Then you've just got to see the process through. And that's the difficult thing, is the owners thinking they're doing right by their tenant. They want to do this. They want to improve their property. Tenant's not willing to come to the table. Okay, it's just getting them to the stage where you just need to accept that we will do what we can. We'll keep you in the loop. We'll make sure we do everything. It's just, again, it's setting those expectations, and that if the tenant doesn't come to the table, we need to kind of go for the eviction. And it could turn nasty, but ultimately at the end of the day, what else can you do?
Yeah.
And if it's not making sense for the owner and they're only making 20 or 30 quid a month, or maybe not even, or they're losing money, then it just becomes a stress for everybody.
See, generally, like when you think about everything you've been through there, and that's just obviously some examples you've obviously had as well, but it baffles me still why people would self-manage. Honestly, like, you're like, why would you not just pay that 10% or whatever it may be to let the agent to handle all that?
Notice wrong, and it's gone up by £100, and the tenant catches on, and the tenant takes advice and says, "You've got it wrong, blah blah blah." They will wait till that day that is due to turn around and say, "By the way, your rent increase notice is wrong." Boom, 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 boom. You then need to reserve it again. So that's, you're thinking 3 months
and 2 days.
And it's another 3 months and 2 days. By the way, it's 3 months and 2 days because the rent date's already passed as well. So you're essentially 7 months before you get your rent increase. That's if you do it properly the second time. I do remember an owner came to me, and she was on the old tenancy agreement. She served the notice wrong by 1 day. And it was a year's lease with no break period. So she had to wait another year before she served the eviction notice again. Oh. Stuff self-managing landlord. But again, it's sometimes it is the case that that's where people can get stung. I've got nothing against people that want to self-manage. Not a problem at all. The problem is that most of the time it is because cash flow's tight. Cash flow is tight, and it's the old thing where I might be cheap out on bits and bobs because I'm not making enough money, or I've got my revaluation wrong and it's been not 100 grand, it's 80 grand, therefore I'm leaving a lot more in. And
do you think that's more your accidental landlords as such? I don't really like the term as such, but it is thrown about in terms of they've just got a flat or a house, moved them apart and rented it out.
Accidental landlords, generally when they've got a house or a flat or something like that, are probably normally in a decent financial position themselves. An accidental landlord would be someone as if mum or dad or the granddad passes and the property's there, and you think about parents and that, they used to pay the mortgage down, make overpayments because it was easy enough to do. Now it's very difficult unless you've got a side job or something like that, making a decent amount of money, or you've just kind of struck lucky. I know people at the back of COVID bought right at the back of it, and the property values have just jumped majorly, so they've got a lot more equity in the property. The accidental landlords are ones where they're just keeping the property in the family, or they've not decided what they want to do with it. They've not lost that emotional attachment, but they're making money off the back of it. It's a little bit easier, but it's the ones where they've maybe got an idea of in their head of what they want to spend, and they don't deviate because maybe they don't have the cash to do it. But they've spent that limit. They spent that 20 grand on a refurb when really you should only be spending 15. Maybe not do that kitchen or not spend 10 grand on that kitchen. But it's maybe because they're doing it for the first time. And things can be tight. But ultimately, they shouldn't feel afraid to reach out to somebody, and they're not just going to batter them over the head with it. At the end of the day, there's zero point in doing that because you're just not going to go back to that person. A lot of good letting agents out there look at it, the bigger picture. They want clients long term, even if it's a client that's not coming in just now. But you give them a hand with somebody, you help them evict the tenant. They might refer you a client on in the future. They might.
Yeah.
So you never know where your next clients come from.
I think this is just my personal opinion, and I've got 2 examples that unfortunately it's happened with me. First of all, I think the government probably leaned towards protecting tenants and landlords, right? 100%.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of experiences where they've just left because they've left the tenancy because they are one of the ones we were moving back into the house. The other one, they were going to buy a house. So it wasn't any bad feeling.
Yeah.
And then it came to the deposit. And
we've had this conversation before.
Yeah. And I think that we probably recovered 10, 15% of the deposit.
Yeah.
And that word wear and tear, those 3 words, just become ridiculous. What is your opinion? What can you do? What measures should landlords take to try and avoid, they've got having to rebuild things and replace stuff because they call it wear and tear?
So the unfortunate, I say it's the unfortunate, right? Okay. The issue that we experience when it comes to a deposit dispute, one party has one opinion, one party has another opinion. The deposit, if the deposit's lodged with one of the 3 providers, they're a mediator. They need to, and the thing is, they don't see anything until it comes to the mediation at all. So I would encourage landlords detailed inventory, time and date stamp photographs before the tenant goes in. That's probably the biggest thing that happens, is that they don't do an inventory. So they hand the property over and it's in whatever condition. Regular inspections, again, visit your tenants. Again, it's relationship building. You've got a good relationship with your tenant and they vacate because they are moving house and they're buying their first house. You've got no issues, they paid rent on time, they've reported maintenance issues, but then there's a red wine stain on the carpet. Carpet needs replaced. Right, okay. You turn around and say it's going to cost me £1,000 to replace that carpet. Tenants immediately, and that's the whole deposit. Tenants like, nah, you're at it. It's no. And that's when it becomes, having the big boy conversation with them. It's going to cost you £600, but it's not just that. It's actually went through and it's affected the floorboards or something like that, or anything like that. So it's not just replacing the carpet. There's additional things, or there's dinks in the wall, or you're making it all about the carpet because that's not something they can complain about. But it's having the big boy conversation to say, this is an issue here. I need to resolve it. I need to come up with something that works for me but works for you. Sometimes people are just self-interested in what works for them, rather than thinking I can get that full £1,000 deposit. It means I can spend 500 quid on the carpet. I can do this, that, and the next thing with the rest of them. Maybe I got 100 quid for myself to take the wife. Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it that way. I think the way that I had it was, I guess they got a solicitor involved, and it actually, if it came to that point to answer the query, and it came to that point that they just kind of break you down. And I know quite a few landlords that just go, I'm just going to write it off the money, which is
because it's not worth their time.
Yeah, but then what do you advise on that? Are you defending the landlord or the tenant?
I try and take the opinion of what I look at it as if I'm not the landlord and I'm not the tenant here, if I'm the one deciding the deposit, I try and look at it as an impartial point of view. The landlord can want one thing and the tenant can want another, but what's realistic?
Mm-hmm.
If that tenant's been in there for 10 years and that carpet's been in there for 10 years, it's not fair to, you can't get new for old. So there's a depreciation cost. There needs to be an expectation from the landlord. The landlord might say, that carpet is a big carpet, it's going to cost me £1,000 to replace. All right, okay. But that carpet's also been in there for 10 years.
Yeah, that's wear and tear in my opinion.
There is wear and tear an element of there, but ultimately if there's a big stain in the middle of the carpet, or there's loads of marks in the middle of the carpet, maybe they've had kids in there and stuff like that as well. There's elements that are wear and tear, but there's elements that are beyond wear and tear. So I would encourage the landlord to take a contribution towards it, rather than saying, I'm going to get that carpet replaced. And by saying it's a contribution towards it, that contribution could be 200 quid. We could say to the landlord, listen, you can get that replaced for 400, 500 quid. And they're like, right, okay, but that's half the cost. We're going to need to replace it anyway. But again, it's building on that relationship with the tenant. Listen, there are things that are there. There is no denying it. The landlord has turned around and said he wants to replace the carpet, wants to retain a deposit. I've said to him that, listen, try and be a bit more realistic of what they can do and stuff like that. And I've said to the landlord, if we can agree a reasonable amount of compensation as a contribution towards the new carpet, then he won't pursue the full deposit. The thing is, going through that process, again, that's £1,000. Somebody's just moved house. You've got a brand new house. What can you do with £1,000? You could probably stretch it quite far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if I say to the tenant, listen, this could take 6 to 8 weeks to resolve. This could go against you. You paint the worst case scenario, but you paint it for the landlord as well.
Mm-hmm.
You paint it for the tenant. This could go against you. You could get offered the full £1,000, and there's nothing you can do about it. Or we can resolve the issue now, and he'll take £400 and you get £600, and that'll be in your bank account by the end of the week. It's kind of the fear of the unknown. But we're not misleading the tenant or the landlord at all, because we're not the ones making the decision on it. We're just going with our best guess.
No.
If the tenant's adamant, nah, I'm not paying it at all, right, okay, just to make you, we've got to present the case to the Safe Deposit Scotland or Letting Protection Scotland or My Deposit Scotland, whoever the deposit scheme is. We've got to present the case on behalf of the landlord here. We're going to show the inventory, we're going to show the checkout, we're going to show the inspection reports. We're also going to show the estimate to replace carpet. They've got that. You will be asked to provide your own evidence. How many tenants do you think are taking photos or taking comments or anything like that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hassle of doing it all as well. But I think that's a good thing with, again, I always go back to using a letting agent, I'm a big advocate of it. Mm-hmm. But where each party have got their own, I guess, kind of feelings towards it and kind of bias towards it, agenda. Mm-hmm. You're right in the middle going, listen, doesn't affect me whatsoever. No. You need a carpet, you want some deposit back, let me find some kind of happy medium here that none of these are going to be fully happy, but he's got on with it and kind of
move on. You move into your new house, landlord puts the new carpet in.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if it's the case, the first tier I keep saying the first tier tribunal, if the deposit protection scheme rules in favour of the landlord, brilliant. The landlord's essentially getting reimbursed for that, because if they went and put a carpet in, and because we would turn around and say, put the carpet in, this will take, it's either that, you sit the property empty for 6 to 8 weeks. What you got to do, miss out on £900 worth of rent for 2 months because you're arguing over £1,000. Suck it up, put it in, move on, we get it back, great. If we don't, again, it's a lot of time for both sides to calm down. And the thing is, when the deposit mediator makes the decision, it's final. There's no right to appeal at all.
Yeah.
But all we can do is present the case to the best possible of our ability and include all the information that we possibly can. But more often than not, people don't want to wait 8 weeks. They don't. Yeah. And it is the case of, well, this could go again, it could go for you, but you want to wait 8 weeks to find out. And by the way, if you don't provide any evidence, they can only go with the evidence that we provide, which is going to show stain on the carpet, no stain on the carpet, no report, excessive wear and tear, because that's what's detailed in the checkout report.
Yeah, because you would have done it religiously, doing it anyway and been on top of it, whereas they're not thinking about that at the end. Absolutely. They're just living in the property. You're like, here's everything I've got, documented, time-stamped photos, and you're like, well, what do you really have apart from the marketing photos you might have been able to kept? So
you're saying that the landlord should insist with his letting agency, make sure you get a strong, good inventory management at the beginning and regular inspection reports.
Absolutely.
Like, as a mandatory.
Absolutely.
And then I hate to say it, but be flexible. Mm-hmm. And instead of being stubborn, going, this 10-year-old carpet, I want it replaced, you're like, it's 10 years old. You'd have replaced it if you lived there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is, again, when you start to kind of do the mindset of treating it more like a business rather than a personal aspect of it, the decisions become a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business expense. Suck it up, move on. You're going from 700 quid to 900 quid, and
We never got you on camera last time doing this.
I like these.
This is
do you?
turmeric.
I like these.
I didn't. I can't remember your face last time.
I've already had.
I like these.
Again, I've already had one of these, 2 of these this morning, so this is why
It's
I'm
our turmeric one though. So
turmeric. It's
Turmeric.
nice.
You get turmeric, you get the ginger ones.
we done the ginger one usually.
I think
I've got
this
the
has
chili one coming.
Oh, nice. This one's got apple and
Chili?
lemon through it. You do.
I ain't doing chili.
Oh, no, they're brilliant.
I'm going to put it in
I'll be
a.
off sick for a few days.
I'll put it in a little covery thing that you didn't notice. I'll tell you it's milk.
There's ones that you get from a well-known German supermarket. Begins with an A, and they've got the turmeric in it with pineapple and something else, and it's really nice.
Does it rhyme with Maldi?
It might do, aye.
I was thinking of the green one when you said A. I wasn't thinking.
Well, we could put you in there. They're American. Well, bottoms up.
Oh, it's brilliant. Is it like a korma? I love them. As I say, I've had some this morning. I'm like, I can't take it anymore. It knocked me over
That's
the
it.
edge.
The thing is, I was taking a regular amount of supplements and stuff like that. Just the usual kind of stuff, magnesium.
That's actually not as bad as the ginger one, to be fair. Ginger
It
one's
does
probably worst.
leave a wee bit in the back of your throat, but it's
It
nice.
gets me after. I'll be like mid conversation, it'll just like creep up on me. I'm like,
The pineapple one I think takes quite a bit of that away.
sweetens it.
Aye.
Continue.
You're going to be a bit like Barry White, aren't you? In a minute, you're like, oh, wow, I love
I
it.
felt it. I do feel it when you take it. And my voice has gone down a wee bit. I'm trying to keep it down.
Drink some water, and if you can get
I
away
know.
with doing it on the cat without doing it on the mic, just
No,
grab it a wee bit.
sorry. I think people who watch it probably know I can't take it anyway, so it's fine.
It's great sport.
You've taken worse.
Let, but let's
seen him
side of it
trouble.
as well. But
Yeah.
maybe just deviate slightly. I'm so obviously cautious of your time as well.
Yep.
So, but what else has been going on outside Lightings? I think we could probably talk about Lightings and
Yeah, I
ring
can talk
caps
about
all
Lightings all
day.
day.
But
It's something I'm passionate about, and that's half the battle. It's something that I think is not going away. It's something I've got a lot of professional and personal opinions the way that I think the industry should go. I do think it should be every landlord. I think should have to use a letting agent.
Yeah.
They should be forced to use a letting agent.
should be to make it professional and above board and make sure that the tenants are safe and everything as well. So
I mean, I've started commenting. I shouldn't really be doing this because but it painstakingly annoys me. You go into a lot of the Facebook groups. I've got a property for let, blah 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 in this area, and I'm like, what's your landlord registration number? What's your EPC rating? Those basic things that separate scammers. And a lot of people, because I've had tenants come to me, I'm not putting a deposit down on the property until I've seen this, that, and the next thing. I'm saying, well, here's a letting agent registration number. Here's the landlord registration number. We detail all that. And again, people are scared of being scammed. If you're asking somebody to put £1,000 deposit on a property and they'll lose that grand, people haven't got it to replace it to put something
Because
else.
there's a reputation in some areas, isn't there, that just go bad landlords and they're just.
Scum landlords. And the thing is, they watch all these TV shows and that, and it's Paul Shampooner. It's all England. It's not Scotland. It's not Scotland. But don't get me wrong, there's a load of landlords out there that are not doing stuff correctly.
mm-hmm.
I don't know, I've been to Govan Hill.
I've done a flip in Govan Hill. It was great.
What else has been happening with you though outside Lightings? Anything else going on with you?
So both myself and my business partner Matt, we have basically just put the foot down on get properties on and just grow the business as quickly as we possibly can. We've got a lot of clients coming to us asking us to project manage refurbs, so managing tradesmen. There's a few things I've done on refurbs that I've never ever done before, to do a smoke test because the client wasn't satisfied. The new fan we'd put in ducted to the outside. We're connected. It's a ground floor flat in Edinburgh. It's an old stone tenement building.
Is this up a chimney you're talking about?
Well, basically, extractor. It's an enclosed bathroom, so there's no window in the
Oh, right,
bathroom.
I see.
Extractor fan is in the ceiling, but the ceiling's like a false ceiling, and then there's an additional kind of void area, but it then connects into the a ducting which goes into the wall. And they're based on experience of the tradesmen and ourselves, it would duct to a fan outside. Client, you'll need to cut this bit out. You will need to cut this bit out. So client has basically asked us to do X, Y, and Z based on a conversation with somebody else, and is not happy because there was a leak under the floor when we pulled the floor up, and they're concerned about moisture and things like that, even though we've said, listen, there's a mechanical fan in there. But because they can't see fresh air ventilation, they're insistent that they want that before they complete the project. It's frustrating. But ultimately, there's again, it's about setting expectations.
And what is your target? So you're moving into different areas. What is your? So is this? Have you fell into this, or is this a strategy you're going to, or what?
So we had an aggressive strategy at the start of the year to add, on average, 1 property a week. So that's 52 properties over the course of the year. And times, I don't even know the figures or anything, but we're on course to kind of get that. But ultimately, we want to grow the letting agency and offer a great service to our clients. We want to kind of be, you can be different from other letting agencies, but you can also be the same. I am finding that certain, trying to watch what I try to say here, certain elements of the industry, they want it to be corporate. They want it to be corporate landlords, and that if you don't conform to everything that they say, you're not allowed to trade. That's I got a general suspicion that's where the industry might be headed. That's why you start a lot of seeing developers doing build to rent. And that's corporate, and that's just another corporate arm for ABC developers.
Yeah.
I think Lloyd's are taking a strong interest in the market up here.
I was going to say, Lloyd's is now the largest renter in the UK, largest homeowners in the UK.
Who they owned by? I don't know who they're owned by, but I think my sneaky suspicion is BlackRock have got quite a lot to do with it as well. But I don't know if they're targeting just the UK as a whole, or if this is England or whatever. But somebody actually said in the podcast a couple of years ago, I think it was Sam Dyer that turned around and said that if you're not thinking about increasing your portfolio to over 10 to 15 or 20, you just want 1 or 2 of that, it's just not going to be worth it in the long run. Something along those kind of lines. That was a few years ago and I was kind of stuck in my head. But we want to build the letting agency. I was listening to your podcast with Nick Ponty, and I think he's got in the region about 300. We're not there yet, but I would like to kind of get to that within the next kind of couple of years. And we want to get to the stage where we've got the business, but it's a business that I can be actively involved in. I don't want to work for the rest of my life. However, I want to have my ear to the ground of what's going on in my business. So I want to be in speaking to the staff members and kind of speaking to clients and retain that relationship with my clients as well. I mean, I've got a good relationship with a lot of my clients at the moment where you can pick up the phone, spoke to a client today, he's just come back for Dubai, how was your holiday, blah, blah, blah. Didn't disturb him in his 10 days away because I know how important holidays can be to business owners. And things like that. Again, it's building those relationships with your clients as well. I'll pick up the phone to clients if I've got a landlord wants to exit the market to say, got this property, you interested in increasing the portfolio? It's an easy source on sale for me. It's a landlord to landlord sale. It's been previously managed by us, so there becomes an element of trust. But it also gives different avenues for the business to grow as well. As much as we've got the letting side of it as well, we can have a great stock for sourcing clients, for clients that look to build a portfolio, and it's another avenue for money to build into the business as well, to make the business better. Do I want to get the property portfolio at 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? Maybe. But at this moment in time, I'm kind of quite content of maintaining my relationship with my clients on a regular basis.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Good. Like I said, I know you've got places to be.
I've got a view to go to next.
To rearrange it to even get you in. So, also
it was genuinely because I thought it was meant to be here yesterday.
That's right. I forgot to tell you. I mentioned him saying, "All good for Wednesday, just to be check in." He's like, "Do you mean tomorrow?" I was like, "No, I mean Wednesday."
You're like,
He's like, I need to change things.
I had it booked it yesterday, but
maybe the way I worded it.
No, you said a week Wednesday, and I've just read a week. Okay, cool.
To be fair, aye. But I think obviously we've got your handles for everything for last time.
Yes.
Just remind us for contacting you.
So letting agencies, Central Scotland Lettings on Instagram. We are CS Lettings. And my details in that are on there. And if you want to get me predominantly on Instagram is Willy.Dodd.
Nice.
Willy.
Yes, Willy, not Wiley, and Dodd, not Dodds. Easy mistakes to make.
Correct, sorry. Listen, mate, thank you very much for coming along again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully the camera works this time.
Yeah.
We'll get you again.
Thanks very much.
I'm sure we'll get you back for many more episodes to come.
Perfect. Thanks
Amazing.
again, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for your
Thanks.
time, mate.